Hey ghouls, I'm Kaala.
Hey ghosties, I'm Aubree, and we're besties who live 3 doors down from each other.
We're the Halloween all-year-round girls. We love watching anything and everything spooky.
And if you're curious to know what all the hype is about certain horror flicks,
But not curious enough to piss your pants watching them?
then this is the podcast for you.
And who knows, we may even talk about our own paranormal experiences.
Ooh. Welcome to Screaming Meemies.
These witches curse. If you don't like cursing, then you're in for some toil and trouble. If you don't mind cursing, then let the cauldron bubble, baby.
Spoiler alert!
This podcast contains all the spoilers. You've been warned.
Trigger warning. This episode contains conversations about child abuse and sexual assault. Hey haunted humans, Kaala here.
And Aubree, we are back with more on The Conjuring.
Last episode, we gave you a synopsis of the film with our reactions and side stories spliced in.
In this episode, we share our thoughts about the movie along with some facts.
Before we jump in, just a quick reminder to follow and share. We're still very new and trying to find our haunted humans.
Leaving a comment or review really helps us know how we're doing. We only get better with your feedback.
Now you can even text our show using the link at the top of the episode's description.
Okay, let's get to the good stuff. Please enjoy the Conjuring discussion episode.
Beep bop boop bop blip blop blam.
The kind of shit I'm on you wouldn't understand. Oh, you're gonna leave us? Were we a little too much already?
Oh, wow.
We're already too much for one.
We haven't even started.
What's really exciting for me is that this is the first time that we get to do like a fact versus fiction kind of situation.
Right.
And I know how much you enjoy kind of deciphering that stuff. And also both of us just love the Conjuring universe, the Ed and Lorraine stuff, just learning all about that. So
Yeah.
I know how much fun you probably had investigating, and I know how much fun I had investigating. Where I want to start personally is talking about The Conjuring in particular is revolved around Ed and Lorraine Warren's case notes about their interaction with the Perron family, right? So I kind of want to talk about a little bit about the Perron family and the difference between The Conjuring, the movie, and their experience in that house. Because in particular, one of the things that really bothered us when we were watching the film is the timeline, right? So specifically, it feels like over the course of maybe 2 months, the parents have moved their entire family into this new house that they don't know anything about.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it sounds like it's a week.
Right.
You know,
so,
before shit starts going crazy and Carolyn asks for help.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how does a family of 7 move all of their belongings, like all of themselves with no support, to a place that they have seemingly no information on? And it just seems like a setup for disaster. And specifically, like, Aubree and I both know what it's like to make a big move, and let's just say it's not so easy to get a doctor and have photos hung up on the wall in a timely manner.
Right.
So that was something that was definitely bothersome to us. But in reality, the parents lived in that house for a matter of years before the Warrens even enter the scene, and then for many years after the Warrens left the scene. So maybe we talk a little bit about the Perron family and their experience.
Yeah, sure. I can fill in that time frame, by the way.
I would love to know.
Yeah.
I know a little bit. I did listen to a couple of interviews with Andrea Perron.
First of all, I got most of my info from 2 podcasts. An interview with Andrea Perron by the Unnormal Paranormal Pod, which I hadn't listened to before, and Greg and Dana Newkirk of the Haunted Objects Pod, who are constantly compared to the Warrens because of their Newkirk Museum of the Paranormal. They have a mobile paranormal museum that they show off around the country. I was introduced to them as the Minister and the Witch from the pod Euphemet. So I was familiar with them. They had more than a few things to say about Ed and Lorraine, which I tried to keep it relevant and to this story, but a lot of it is just kind of gives you an idea of who they were and what they were like. So
the interview that I listened to with Andrea Perron was from Truth or Demons podcast, which I'd never listened to either, but
yeah,
it was great.
Nice. Yeah, and I liked both the ones I listened to. I thought they were interesting. The only thing I didn't quite grasp was that in the Unnormal pod, he kept referring to her as Andrea Perone. And then my whole world just went upside down. I was like, so is it Perrin or Perone? And I could not get to the bottom of it to save my life.
That's so funny.
But I would venture a guess that since they were like consultants on the movie and they got interviewed for the movie, somebody would have pulled one aside and be like, it's actually
Andrea
Perone.
had to sign off on
you know
stuff,
what I mean?
So, yeah.
So I think it's Perrin, and I think they just
fuck that one.
Mispronounced her name.
That's okay.
But
they clearly hadn't seen the movie.
I couldn't find a video to save my life with her introducing her with her full name. So I was just like, all right. So I apologize in advance if it's Andrea Perone and not Andrea Perrin, but I'm going to go with Perrin. For anyone who needs context, Andrea is one of the daughters in the movie. She is the oldest daughter in the movie. Yeah, apparently they lived there for a few years before the Warrens showed up.
Right, yeah.
So, but they ended up living there for 10 years. Yeah, they moved out in 1980, but that was mostly due to financial reasons. Like, what they said in the movie was pretty spot on. They sunk every penny in it, that kind of thing.
Right.
According to Andrea, she said that, they saw a full-bodied apparition on day 1, 4 out of the 5 girls. So, the bad shit didn't start until, a little later in, the first month of them being there. They never reached out for help.
One of the things I heard Andrea talk about in the interview that I listened to was her saying that a lot of the things seemed a little innocuous at the time. Like, there would be little things that would happen, and they wouldn't necessarily discuss them with the family members, just thinking nothing of it until something would happen where it would bring all of those things up, and they would start to recognize that more stuff was going on than they realized, and how long that stuff was going on. It's got to be hard to live in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
Andrea Perrin has gone on to write a handful of books about her experience. She is definitely involved in many interviews. She's
very active.
She's very active in sharing her story and experience. And it seems as though her story and the story of The Conjuring in the film definitely don't add up to the same thing. What seems to be the common denominator between the two is that there was a experience that the Warrens had in the Perrin family's farmhouse that was unexplainable. And they had come in to do a seance, and some really wacky shit happened at that time. The Warrens were not necessarily the most welcome to be there doing all of it. It seemed like there was a little bit of divide between
Roger and Carolyn. Yeah, that's what I gathered too.
Listening to Andrea tell her story and thinking back on the story told in the film and thinking about the other films and the Conjuring universe that involve Ed and Lorraine, it's very clear that people's perspectives are their realities, because it's not as though the Conjuring films just came out of nowhere. It's not all just completely made up. In fact, it's actually toned down to the actual experiences that are in the case notes from the Warrens. They were trying, my understanding is that James Wan was trying really hard to keep a PG-13 rating, and they were not successful in doing it, but they actually toned down a lot of the scenes and took out a lot of stuff that happened. What's so fascinating, though, is that, Lorraine Warren assisted on a lot of the film and sharing her details and Ed's journals and their case notes. Her perspective and Ed's perspective are still their reality as well, right? And Andrea's perspective is her reality, and she's sharing what she believes to be the perspective of her mother and father. And, I haven't heard any interviews with either of them,
Yeah.
but but if we take Andrea's word for it, it's really fascinating to see how we just kind of weave our stories into the narrative.
Yeah, it is. It's like, because for me, just comparing what Andrea said in her interview and what a couple of very involved paranormal investigators' research brought up, it's like there's some overlap, but there's a lot of very different experiences happening, like very different feelings too. Like, Andrea didn't seem to feel like it was a very scary place to live at all.
Right. She mentioned a few times that there were some entities that felt like friends, like family, and even a longing to return to see them or to be with them, experience them again.
Yeah, a little, the way she described it sounded a little to me like Nell in Haunting of Hill House. Like she kept describing it as the only place she really felt like was home, and that a lot of stuff happened there, but she still wanted to go back.
Yeah.
And like she wanted to revisit those spirits, which I thought was interesting.
Is this Stockholm Syndrome?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Who knows?
But yeah, some things about Ed and Lorraine. They established the New England Society of Psychic Research, called NESPR. Lorraine considered herself a trance medium who could channel spirits and the dead, and also a clairvoyant who could see the future. They had 10,000 cases.
Wow.
Yeah.
10,000?
10,000.
That's a lot. Over what span of time, do we know?
It seems that they started to get active in the late 60s. So...
Wow.
I didn't get a time frame specifically, but...
I mean, they did it for a long time. And
Yeah.
had a lot of cases.
Yeah, even if it was... He died in 2006, so if we went from 1969, which I think is when they actually started doing it, to 2006, like, it's still a pretty good chunk.
So, we've been made to love Ed and Lorraine because of the actors who play them.
Right.
And in doing this research, I think we've found that maybe Ed and Lorraine were not the most honest humans.
Maybe not. Maybe not the most honest, and maybe not the most, like, wonderfully in love couple.
Totally. So it is a little bit sad.
It was
a little bit sad.
A little heartbreaking to see that. But apparently on Ed's deathbed, he told Lorraine that she needed to tell the story of the Perrins.
Which, until then, they had promised the Perrin family that they would not share anything about the details of their case.
Also, it was like later when they were doing the junkets for the movie that Andrea got some time with Lorraine, and Lorraine admitted that they were like way over their heads in that house. So that might have been also why they didn't release
And
it.
she apologized.
I don't know about that part. That part wasn't specifically said by Andrea.
About the apologizing?
Yeah,
That's what she said on the one that I
Oh,
listened
okay,
to.
cool. All right, yeah. I didn't get that part, but all right, cool. But yeah, I mean, how many times has she told this story, right? Like, how many times? Be hard to keep it straight.
I did actually listen to 2 different interviews with her. The couple on the YouTube video that I had sent you.
Oh, yes.
She had spoken on there, and she said more in the other podcast that I listened to, and so I did wonder how much of it is storytelling,
Yeah. All right. As for adding some more color to Ed and Lorraine's, like, how they got there, I could tell that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I guess they met when he was working as an usher at a movie theater. So she went to go see a movie with her family or something, and they met, and then somehow, I guess, within that first interaction, they found out that they both liked paranormal shit, and that was all she wrote, apparently.
Wow.
And then he went off to the Navy during World War II, and as soon as he got back, they got married, and he taught painting classes and was a bus driver for a while, and this is how he did it. He got the local haunted goss from the kids on the bus.
Word of mouth.
Then he and Lorraine would set up out front of people's houses that he thought were haunted and start painting it. And Lorraine would stand there and tell Ed what she sees. because she could see, like, some parts of the house that, you know, ghouls or ghosts or what have you.
Yeah,
and he would paint
say, like, I did this painting of your house, and use it to open conversation.
Right. And they'd be curious enough to come out and be like, what are you doing? Get off my lawn!
Little shisty behavior already, we see.
Yeah. But later he said that his paintings were the impressions of the supernatural. Like, his impressions of the supernatural.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
I'd love to see those paintings.
Yeah, I saw one on the podcast, the Haunted Objects Pod. They have one he called a barn door painting.
Oh, interesting.
It looked just like a red barn in a field with snow. It was innocuous, but I guess they do get creepier.
I'm just curious what his art style is like.
Yeah, I couldn't zoom in enough to, like, really look at it, but I mean, we probably could just Google it. They started off after, you know, checking out a bunch of homes and telling people what was going on in them and stuff. I think they said they did, like, a craft fair or something, like a lecture at a craft fair, and then that booked them a gig to, like, a high school. So then they, like, talked at a high school, and then they did, like, a bunch of lectures at high schools and colleges, which at first was about, like, ghosts and psychics and seances, and Ed referred to himself as a psychic investigator. But then...
What school? I'm sorry. Hold up.
Mm-hmm.
So what schools are having paranormal investigators or whatever, what have you, come in and talk about all that stuff? Like, I don't know. The school that I went to would be like, absolutely fucking not.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't say fucking because LDS community, but...
No. I think it's because they presented as a very Catholic couple. Which
that is so interesting.
Also, yeah, they presented that very
sounds like Ed was a sweet talker.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like he had a lot of charisma.
Mm-hmm. And then, in 1971, they started their talks, their lectures shifted towards demons and satanic cults. You know why?
Why?
I'll give you one guess. It's that one movie we couldn't finish.
Oh my god, The Exorcist.
Yeah. So, the book for The Exorcist came out in 1971. Which was based off of a true story. And that's when they started blaming satanic cults for things all the time. And it's kind of funny because it's like, the amount of times they blamed it, it's like, how many satanic cults can be in Connecticut? Like, how many? And,
but the little brainworm got into everybody, and that's what happens.
Satanic panic, baby! So after The Exorcist, that's when Ed started referring to himself as a demonologist in training. And he said that people weren't ready for talking about demons before. But now, after The Exorcist is out, now, no holds barred, you know? A little sus. Maybe we can be charitable and say that was 100% true. But the next part is not. Ed said he was young and present for the exorcism of that famous case. The one that's based off of The Exorcist.
What?
Yeah, he was like in his early 20s or something. In 1949.
Where did that happen?
He said it was in Mount Rainier, Washington. Except it was Mount Rainier, Maryland. So...
he's a big old liar.
Big old liar.
He's a big old liar. So this brings me to a question that I have about the Warrens.
Okay.
How good of investigators could they have really been? It's hard to get information in that time, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. Mm-hmm. Especially on the kind of shit that they're looking for, right? Bathsheba did not haunt the Perrin family farmhouse.
Yeah, and that's what Andrea will, like, die on that hill, apparently. I wanted to mention that the Warrens said playing Dungeons & Dragons would get you possessed by demons and you would become a necrophiliac. Necromancer? I don't know. You would want to bone the bones. Okay? And I thought that was hysterical. If they only knew what I was doing in Baldur's Gate 3. I'm just kidding. I am not a necromancer. I'm not doing anything bad. Except polyamory, romance.
That's not bad.
Several of my characters, okay? That's it. I'm not doing anything sketchy other than that. But I thought it was hysterical. Like,
that's really funny.
Because, like, I remember they even touched on it in, like, Stranger Things, that, like, people thought D&D was the satanic panic, you know?
Oh, totally.
I was like, oh my god, where did that come from? Apparently the Warrens. And just to close that out, and if anybody had any questions about what is happening specifically with Lorraine's house now, Tony Spera, who worked for the Warrens for 30 years, he ended up marrying Judy.
The Warrens' daughter.
Yeah. And now he's the head curator of the Occult Museum and the head of Nesper. So, in case you were curious, what is currently happening to Annabelle?
We said it in the previous episode, but both of the Warrens have passed at this point.
So you want to talk about Bathsheba?
Yeah, Bathsheba, what?
All right.
Why'd they do this to you?
All right, so according to Andrea, the bad shit started within a month of them moving in. And this is well before the Warrens were involved. A paranormal research group rolled up in August saying that Carolyn called them and she denied that. The team leader recognized her voice, though, from the phone call. Bum, bum, blah. His name was Keith Johnson, and he sought out the Warrens. But, like I said, this was in August. The Warrens waited until the day before Halloween to show up because the veil would be thinnest. Carolyn was quoted saying, "There's no veil. There's no veil here. It's always going on." And I guess, like, the moment Lorraine walked in the door, she plucked the name Bathsheba out of the air.
Bathsheba could have just been passing through.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that house is a gateway or, you know, has a portal in it or something, you know, she could have just been a passerby.
Right.
If she was a neighbor in that area, she could have just been a passerby.
I guess the local lore of the time accused her of being a baby killer. And,
because she was nannying and one of the children that she was nannying was killed with a crochet needle or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
Oh, okay. Well,
I heard about the needle, but I didn't hear about the nannying.
Yeah, so I guess to my understanding, I could be totally wrong, but I listened to so many things at this point, I couldn't even tell you where I got it, so do your own research. She had a handful of children, and one or two of them died, which wasn't uncommon for that time, but she also was caring for other children in the neighborhood, and one of them was killed with a crochet needle to the base of the skull or something like that.
Yeah, I heard about that part. I didn't hear about the nannying part. The whose kid it was very unclear in the podcast that I listened to. So that checks out. But yeah, I guess like 3 out of her 4 kids died before age 4, which again was the time. I guess that could have been why people thought maybe she was doing something witchy. According to, and that this is the part of the story where Andrea is telling me this. I'm listening to her perspective. She said that like one of their neighbors knew Bathsheba. He was like super young kid, and then he was like super old.
That too, and the timeline in which she said that did not add up to me when she said it. I was like, that sounds like too many centuries that somebody wouldn't live through. I don't know. It was odd when she said it timeline wise. It didn't seem to fit in my brain, but apparently also I don't math. So
I guess that kid, now old man at the time, had told her that Bathsheba was like really beautiful, which I guess also leaned into the witchy thing, and she was super mean. Which, if 3 out of your 4 kids died, I think you'd be pretty pissed too.
Yeah.
But I guess all of these things are pointing to witch.
Right.
But Andrea's convinced that Bathsheba wasn't the baddie.
I say innocent until proven guilty.
Right. Apparently, she's visited Andrea many times, and it's never been bad. So she's convinced that there's some other feminine energy there.
Feminine-omenon.
Yeah, feminine-omenon. Of the evil variety.
It's a whole different view on that word.
Yeah, right. There's a whole other phenomenon, evil energy there that was not Bathsheba, that was causing the bad shit. Also, she clarified that the Rory character in the movie, who's like the little ghost boy, the little Victorian ghost boy, his name was actually Oliver Richardson, because the Richardsons lived there at some point. And apparently, in real life, Nancy's boyfriend was related to the Richardsons.
Huh.
And he was like a close relative. And he moved in after the parents moved out with Nancy. Nancy moved back in. She, like, actually really never left. She babysat the kids who were moving into the house when the parents were selling the house. And she, like, begged to let them, like, have her be a live-in nanny.
Huh.
And then after, like, a couple years, her boyfriend moved in. And then, like, shortly after that, became an alcoholic. And then a couple years later, committed suicide. So, Andrea said the same thing happened to her boyfriend. And she said that place had a profoundly negative effect on men. So that's what I have to say about Bathsheba. Also, that people, they can't keep a tombstone to save their life for her because people come over and just, like, destroy it all the time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder how much research they did about the area before they came that night. You know?
Right. Like, Andrea said that Lorraine and Ed did no research before then, but, like, how could she really know?
And it doesn't seem like they were the most honest people, so, like...
Yeah. And if Carolyn was able to research that stuff and come up with that stuff, then I'm sure that Ed and Lorraine could. If they were professional grifters.
Right.
Which I'm not saying you can't be a grifter and also a psychic. You can also be both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they could get that knowledge if Carolyn got that knowledge. You know?
Well, now I'm just thinking about Ed and Lorraine and how much they are like Sam and Dean Winchester.
Oh, yeah? Just stirring up shit and then not fixing it up afterwards?
As we know, Ed and Lorraine were not so buttoned up Catholics.
Yeah. You could say that.
In our reaction episode, we had a discussion about how people who are religious and in relationships navigate their faith and doubt in the boundaries of their relationship. That thought came up pretty quickly, and I don't know if I did the best job articulating my curiosity and pondering at that time, so I had a few extra thoughts that I wanted to share on that topic.
Yeah, go for it.
First, just for context, I just wanted to like point out that Aubree and I both had religious upbringings, and in the last episode, I shared that for me, it was not the vibe.
Yeah, same.
Because it felt false to me, I had curiosity of what it must be like to have that belief and share it with a partner, like how that affects the relationship dynamics and so on. My response of ew when Ed and Lorraine talk about God bringing them together for a reason is merely my own like religious traumas and not disgust at the sentiment.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like that was super clear when I'm like, ew, it's like not really at the sentiment. It does sound like a line, like you had said,
yeah,
right?
It sounds like a pickup line.
But it is really more about the God bringing them together piece. Like it just triggered some part of that thing for me. It triggered part of that issue for me. So.
No, that makes total sense. And I went to Catholic high school, so nobody at me. Alright? I did my time. Thank you very much.
I did my time.
Yeah.
All right, hit me with some more facts, and then I'll hit you with some emotions.
Okay, here we go. All right, so I'm going to pick up where I left off. All right, so I want to say a couple things about Annabelle, which I thought were interesting. So Greg and Dana said that Ed had said, there's nothing left in the Annabelle doll. I thought that was interesting, because there's the whole obsessive bit in the movie where it's like, we want to make sure that the vessel is contained so that something else can't just, like another genie can't pop in the bottle, right?
Right.
It's strange that Ed would point out that they don't possess objects, yet they kept Annabelle. And they keep her in such a spirit jail, let's say.
Right.
You know? Yeah. Also, fun fact, you can have spaghetti dinner with Annabelle and some other haunted antiquities.
Wow. No, thank you. No, thank you.
You can go to the Warrens' house and eat spaghetti there with Annabelle. Yeah. I know. I was like, ooh. So, the house. I want to go on to the house. Apparently, for context, it was built in 1736, and these are just interesting things. It was part of the Underground Railroad. Isn't that cool?
That is cool.
Because apparently the Arnolds, who were the people who initially, lived there, were Quakers and abolitionists.
Huh. You know what's really interesting about that is from a lot of the different, paranormal podcasts that I've listened to, places like that are the most frequent to have those kinds of portals or gateways. So... call back to earlier when I was saying, Bathsheba could have just been a passerby, you know?
Yeah. Which is why immediately after Andrea said that, she made a point to say that farmhouse, it was a portal disguised as a farmhouse. That's what she said immediately after that. So you were on the same wavelength there.
There we go, yeah.
The Richardson family built the house and sold it to the Arnolds. When Carolyn researched the house, the same family owned it for 8 generations, which was the Arnolds. So before that was the Richardsons, which I had pointed out earlier, that kid was a descendant. And she found that a lot of people died mysteriously and a lot of kids drowned in the nearby creek.
Wow.
Yeah, so that part is real. Carolyn's research also said, this is what she said, that Bathsheba was a real witch in the 1800s and cursed the land, rumored to be a Satanist. Lorraine took those notes and put it as part of her case notes.
Interesting. So that's where that all comes from.
Yeah. And because she was suspected of killing an infant with a knitting needle, this next part of the story is interesting. Andrea said that Carolyn was, sitting on a sofa, and she felt this tremendous stabbing pain, and, her leg was, shaking. And it was just like a firm puncture wound in her leg, just a pool of blood. The Warrens said they think that Bathsheba took that needle, that crochet needle, with her to the grave.
Whoa.
I know, and I was like, whoa, that's fucking creepy.
Spooky.
So, I don't know.
That's scary.
Yeah. As far as the haunting itself goes, I do have a part of that. Andrea didn't go into a whole lot because I think she wants you to read her book, House of Darkness, House of Light, but they did pry this out of her. Carolyn became possessed during a seance. So, all the adults were there. They brought in another medium, and Roger was actually there. Roger, contrary to the story, he was not
not interested in this happening. He did not want the Warrens investigating. He did not want them coming for the seance. He basically ended up just having to give in to his wife's will at that point.
Right. He didn't trust them as far as he could throw them. Which, fun fact, pretty far, apparently. I'll let you know. But, yeah, so Roger actually was a part of the seance, and the girls were not allowed, but Andrea and, I want to say Nancy? I can't remember.
Yeah, one of the other girls.
One of the other girls peeked through the door. Andrea said that this other medium basically just opened the door wide, like spiritual malpractice, just opened a portal to hell, you know what I mean? Woo! And it possessed Carolyn. And she spoke in a language not of this world, and it was not her voice. Her chair levitated, so that part was real. That's the one part in the movie. Her chair levitated and was thrown 20 feet across the room. She landed and hit her head, and everyone in the room just thought they saw her die.
Yeah.
And
because the Warrens left at that point, right? And they didn't know if she had survived or not. So when they came back the next day to see if she lived.
Yeah. Roger kicked them out. And by that I mean Roger decked Ed in the face and told them to get the fuck out of the house. So at that point, they had no idea if Carolyn was still alive. Roger just reacted.
Yeah. Wow.
And as another fun fact, they brought some cinematographers and audiographers and videographers and things like that. They brought a crew, right, to really capture this moment. And the cinematographer's equipment in the basement was absolutely shattered. Thousands of dollars of equipment just fucked up. So And yeah, Andrea said, like, nothing could compare to watching that because she definitely thought she just saw her mom die. It was wild. This part is fully, like, Andrea's perspective. That first apparition they saw on day one was this, like, full-body apparition of a guy who they referred to as Mr. Arnold. They felt like he was a part of the family. He was a good spirit. Andrea thinks that they could have gotten through it without Ed and Lorraine, and that their presence just stirred up activity.
Yeah.
She also estimated there were like 12 or 13 spirits in the house. Also, I want to apologize for my comment in the movie when I said they weren't church-going folk, if you know what I mean. The parents were actually Catholic. The dad went to the Navy and intended to go back into seminary when he was done. But then he met Carolyn, and she converted to Catholicism for Roger.
That's funny. I think I actually said that line.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because it was in our synopsis.
Oh, yeah.
So you wrote it, but I said it.
Oh, yeah. Are you sorry?
I'm not sorry.
I want to
disparage everyone.
I want to just say, fuck you and the horse you rode in on. Why are you listening to this podcast? So yeah, the kids were born and raised and baptized Catholic. She said she had this really funny story of how they got kicked out of the church. And it was during the haunting. They were kicked out of the church because April, who was like 7 at the time, said out loud during a church service that they had ghosts just like God. And it was like, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And the priest
get kicked out?
The priest escorted them out. A 7-year-old said they had ghosts just like God. And the priest was like, I'll see you to the door.
Wow.
Yeah. And like Roger...
Shame on that priest.
Yeah, right? Roger was fucking pissed. Because again, like I said, he wanted to be a priest.
Yeah.
He was like bought in.
That's
so
wild.
That was a pretty big fuck you. Just a little bit about the movie. Ed interviewed everyone but Roger. So Ed interviewed the kids, Carolyn, that whole bit when he's doing the recording. Yeah, he interviewed everybody but Roger because Roger refused.
I'm sure Roger just refused, Mm-hmm.
And of course, I did not read Andrea's books because she's got like 3 books. But she said that everyone in the family had their space in the book to write what they wanted to say, which I thought was cool. Might be
that's great.
Worth visiting. When I was listening to the Newkirks, they said that Andrea thinks it was an alien abduction.
I got the impression of that from the podcast that I listened to, the interview with her. I got the impression that there was something like that because the girl who was interviewing had read the books, but it was a little too esoteric. Like, I wasn't quite following exactly what they were talking about because they didn't exactly say it, but I got the impression that maybe that's what she thought.
Okay, all right, yeah. That, like, completely sidelined me. Like, I did not pick up on that at all. She didn't say that at all.
Listen to the book on, like, tape or something. Like,
I
book
looked.
on tape. Oh my god, book on tape.
Yeah.
I'm so old.
No.
We should find the Audible.
Yeah, maybe it's on Audible. I did try to look for
the audiobook.
But I didn't have any success. But maybe it just wasn't on the library audiobook. Maybe I need to look on Audible because I would listen to it for sure. I didn't pick up on the alien bit at all. Like, she didn't spill that beat. Like, she did a really good job in the interview, but she held it pretty close to the chest to make you want to read the book, right?
Yeah.
So I did not see that shit coming at all. Like, she did not allude to that at all. Now, on to the movie. Andrea said they had to tone down the movie to like 5% because it was too scary. She said that the execs didn't want to scare the audiences away. But the execs all read Andrea's books, but said it was too scary for the movie, so they went with Lorraine's case files instead. And even then, it's only like a small percentage of that. It's like the based on a true story of it is that this family did exist. They did live in this house. There was a woman named Bathsheba who lived there at some point, and some freaky shit happened there. And that's like the beginning and end of the true story part of that. Yeah. Apparently.
Well, Mom did get possessed and sure did levitate.
Yeah.
And
so that part,
that's
like the only part that really happened. Yeah. Andrea said that the actors...
I wonder Sorry to
No,
cut you
go
off.
ahead.
I wonder, just from the Warrens' case notes, if the stuff with their house and Judy and all that stuff happened.
Yeah, I was curious about that. I did not get any clarity on that.
Huh.
But I'm assuming not, because Annabelle is not a part of this story at all, like the real
Right.
story. Like,
Yeah.
Annabelle is a separate entity, and Annabelle was very much a part of that sequence. So I don't know. That part was very unclear to me. We won't know until we, read the case files, I guess. Andrea said that the actors and the directors were just brilliant and lovely. She said that James Wan was just so good to the girls, because Andrea was, super worried they were going to be traumatized making the movie. They were very aware they were portraying living people. And she said that the script was sent back to the screenwriters 7 times, and not one scene from that movie was in Andrea's book. Carolyn eventually saw the movie on DVD. She couldn't bring herself to go see it. And she was upset about the scissors over April's heart. She was like, I could never. But she got really defensive about the fact that Ed would never do an exorcism by himself that would be considered a slap in the face of the church. A lot of mixed feelings, so many mixed feelings.
Definitely.
Andrea was worried that when the movie came out, because it was such a different experience from her actual experience, that it wouldn't be a good thing. But she had some interesting takeaways. While she was watching the movie, she saw signs in it, like certain objects in the movie were things they owned in their real life. So she saw that as a sign that these were this was an essential stepping stone for people to be interested to hear her story. So even though The Conjuring is basically not at all about her actual lived experience, it made people interested to find out more. And I thought it was kind of cool. She talked about this cat painting that Andrea's character had, and it was this white cat, and she was like, I remember going to a garage sale for my birthday and getting that. And I never told anybody that. And it's the exact same one in the movie. And that whole bit when the Renesmee girl, I can't remember what her name was in the movie, she runs through, it's the one shot where they're unpacking and she's running through with the wind chime. They had that same fucking wind chime.
Wow.
Yeah, so she saw these as signs that this was okay, even though it wasn't representative of her experience, that the universe was saying it was worth it.
She did say in the Truth or Demons podcast that she was grateful that it had opened up so many people to their interest in investigating the paranormal and things like that. So
yeah, that makes sense. Oh, and I didn't know this, but because I haven't seen the Haunting in Connecticut movie in forever, but apparently that's based off of one of Ed and Lorraine's cases too.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I'd have to rewatch it. I remember liking it when it came out, but I haven't seen it probably since then.
Yeah, that was one of the first paranormal scary movies that I watched.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good one. I liked it. I don't know if it still stands up. I don't know if it's still good.
We'll find out.
Yeah, right? Yeah, we'll find out.
Stay tuned for the Haunting in Connecticut episode.
Right. So yeah, now I have a bunch of dark shit to talk about the Warrens, if you want to hear about it.
I do want to hear about it.
Okay. I'm trying to order this in a way it makes sense and it's not just starting off with the very worst thing and then going down from there. For the Amityville Horror, they were only there for a couple nights. Even though they're even literally when I just did a Google search just to I just said Ed Warren Navy because I knew he was in the Navy, but I couldn't remember what war he served because I was it can't be World War II. He can't be that old. He is that old. And AI even summarized Amityville Horror in their thing so many times.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, they were only there for a couple nights. And get this. The Enfield haunting, the one that's The Conjuring 2, in England, they were only there for a couple hours.
Whoa.
Right? Yeah.
That's scary.
Right? How much could they have gotten out of a couple hours? And they spent something I think Andrea said they visited 8 or 9 times over the course of 6 months, I want to say, for the Perrin family. But yeah, I thought that was wild. The Newkirks went on to recommend watching the Enfield Haunting show on Apple TV. that came out recently that's based off of the actual recordings from the actual investigators who actually checked out the Enfield hauntings.
That's so exciting. I love all the shows on Apple TV Plus, and I didn't know that there was
we should watch it.
Let's do it.
They also mentioned watching The Devil on Trial, which is a documentary for The Conjuring 3, for The Devil Made Me Do It. Apparently, for that, the Warrens paid that family like $5,000 for their book when they made, like, in today's dollars, like $300K.
Wow.
Yeah. Which was really sad, I guess. In the documentary, it's like, you can tell that kid who was initially possessed, he's like forever fucked up from that.
Damn.
So it's like, wow.
That sucks.
$5K for that. Gee, thanks.
I'm really mad at the Warrens.
Yeah. Hold on to your tea, my dear. It gets worse. The Newkirks thought they were grifters because they aren't performing essentially aftercare for the families these things happened to. They were, the Newkirks, like, one of their biggest gripes was that they just, like, they come in like a wrecking ball, they stir up all the shit.
And then they don't fix anything and they leave.
Yeah, and they don't fix anything, they just leave. Which is, like, basically, they also pointed out, kind of laid the roadmap for where current paranormal reality TV shows are right now. Like, think about Ghost Adventures. As much fun it is to watch, that's totally what those dudes do.
Yeah.
They just go in, yell at ghosts,
And then
piss them off, and leave. You know? Okay, and as far as more shysting goes, one of their first books, or maybe the first book, that they wrote is called The Demonologist. And these are, like, based on their case files. I guess the guy who wrote the Demonologist book for the Warrens sued the movie for $1 billion.
whoa.
Yeah, that's what he went for. And they countered it by saying it's fair use to depict something based on historical fact, which I guess is a real retort. And he said it was a complete work of fiction and therefore means he's obliged to a portion of the movie revenue. And they were like, but you wrote it saying it was true. And he was like, I only found out later that it wasn't. And then they settled outside of court.
So who knows?
The fuck does that mean, right? So that seems pretty freaking shysty.
Yeah.
Now for the worst part. So allegedly, a Hollywood Reporter lawsuit came to light saying a woman named Judy Penny had a sexual relationship with Ed when she was 15 and he was in his 30s.
Oh no.
Yep. She says she lived in the Warrens' house for 40 years with Lorraine's knowledge.
What?
She was like his live-in mistress.
Holy shit.
Yeah, dude. I told you
hold on to that all this time.
Yeah.
Oh my god. From the last time we sat down and talked about The Conjuring till now, you've held on to that news.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's
are
been
a
hard.
professional.
It's been hard.
You are a professional.
I've seen you several times since then.
Fuck, dude?
Yeah. So
Okay, she was 15.
She was 15.
And she lived with them for how long?
40 years.
40 fucking years! Oh my god. Oh
Yeah.
my god.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about Stockholm Syndrome earlier as a joke, and now it's not funny anymore.
No.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So one of the things that the Newkirks were showing, because they have a collection of things that are, from the Warrens, they have a copy of, I want to say it was The Demonologist. Like, it was seeming that they were making copies, like home copies of their books, so they could give them at their lectures and make money purely from that and just cut out the writer and the book publisher. So yeah, they have this like shysty copy of one of the books, and it says something like, "To my sweet Judy, I know how much you've sacrificed for me, with love, EW XXX."
What the fuck?
And you would assume initially that was Judy Warren. No. Apparently. That's why they're like, this is compelling evidence right here for this theory, because...
I mean, was she there before Judy was born?
I don't know.
That means they just named Judy after that Judy.
Yeah, creepy. I don't know.
Is Judy even Lorraine's daughter?
Creepy.
I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Where did you get this information from? This one?
Yeah, I got this one from the Haunted Objects pod with Greg and Dana Newkirk.
Wow.
Yeah. It gets worse. So...
Oh my... How does it get worse?
It gets worse. Sorry.
Oh no.
So again, this is a Hollywood Reporter lawsuit that came to light. So Hollywood Reporter, you know, they have so many lawyers, they have double-checked all these things. They wouldn't just, like, you know, pull out this stuff and just be like, yep, pull it out of my ass. No, they, like, really did this. So she said, this Judy Penny said, she got pregnant with Ed's kid, and Lorraine told her to get an abortion. Little Miss High and Mighty Catholic Pants.
It's Judy. It's Judy.
Right?
There's no way.
So
there's no way she got an abortion. There's no, oh my god. What is happening?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was wild. And then one of the things I thought was the weirdest was, you know, Lorraine, when she was signing on to the movie, everybody has like contracts where they say things like, you know, my character can't be depicted like doing crimes or having sex or whatever moral high ground they have, right? That's normal. Lorraine's contract said that her character wouldn't be depicted doing crimes, sexually assaulting anyone, including children, enumerated many ways to do that, and having extramarital affairs.
Wow.
Yeah, which is a really strange industry stipulation.
That's really crazy.
It was really fucked up. The most charitable way I can infer that is that they did, you know, consult on a lot of cases with kids, and that, you know, I know specifically for that Devil Made Me Do It, that kid was like 10 or 12 or something like that. Most charitable is that obviously like going through an exorcism is like a really traumatic, horrible experience, and it's like violent. So that's my charitable.
Yeah.
But like
that's like given the benefit of the doubt.
But that's yeah, exactly. But that is like a really weird stipulation to put in your contract.
My mind is so blown right now. I don't know how to process all this information.
I know. I thought that was so fucking crazy.
Listeners, if this is the first time you're hearing this information, pull over.
Yeah, right.
Take a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I probably should have prefaced this by like, this is some really, I mean, I know I said it was dark shit, but like, this is some really dark shit. So yeah, then I thought I would say what the Newkirk's takeaways were. And I thought they had some really interesting perspectives because Ed had said that, you know, exorcising a demon or like getting a possession or getting a ghost out of a house is like putting an electric collar on a spirit. And the Newkirks were like, their opinion is that you should ask the spirit what it needs. Because, like, if someone is reaching out to you and you believe it has consciousness, your response is to torture it, put a shock collar on it.
That's, yeah.
When, like, they see these things as, like, gifts to give you a new perspective of what's going on in life. I thought that was really interesting.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, another reason that they really hate them is because they find that reading all of these caseworks and stuff, basically anything that doesn't fall into Catholic categories, they describe as demonic, which often includes being racist and narrow-minded. So, like, you know, they said something like the monks in Nepal are doing dark witchcraft, making
oh my gosh
tulpas of Bigfoot.
Oh my gosh.
Like crazy shit like that. So they were saying a lot of basically racist shit against other countries and religions and things. So that was another reason that they're just like, I hate that this is like the gold standard, that like this is what American parapsychology is like circled around, and that this is what paranormal investigators think is like the way they have to
just
think.
because they were shiesty enough to get their names out there.
Yeah. And they were thinking that like Lorraine was probably actually a medium, you know, they thought she probably did have gifts, but that Ed was probably such a grifter that like this is the outcome, where if she didn't have him, then she might have been like actually what we think she was depicted as, you know, like a medium who's out there to help people and like wants to do it out of the goodness of her heart and is a good person.
Or she might have told somebody and they locked her up.
Also, I wanna touch on, like, did you ever hear about, like, Lorraine's realization of her gifts?
No.
Okay. So she was at, like, a Catholic boarding school as a kid, and that's when she saw, like, she started to see things. Namely, she saw they were planting, like, a tree, and then she saw this, like, really distinct vision of it being, like, a big old tree. And I guess that was, like, her first...
It was like a glimpse into the future.
Yeah, that was her first clairvoyant moment. And then, like, other things would happen, and she talked to the nuns, and of course they were like, this is the devil! So, like, they did not appreciate her for her gifts. Which I thought was really interesting. Like, that you could have that kind of Catholic trauma. Like, you were born into the Catholic Church. They reject you, but then you still follow it. That was weird.
I mean, I guess she just has to be a believer in her faith, right?
Right.
So if the church has discarded her, then that's the church and she has to just move on with her own relationship to her God or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, apparently these are all things you can find. You can find all those lawsuits, you can find these allegations. Pretty wild.
That is intense.
I feel like it really shits on the whole movie, too. It's just like, I really liked this movie, and I really like these characters, and wow.
Honestly,
okay.
It makes me feel like the personal shit that I'm about to share is not so scary to talk about. No. So, I wanted to share a little bit on just my thoughts about the movie in general, since, you know, part of what we do is kind of review our thoughts on the movie. So, first of all, Screamies, like, 5 Screamies. This is, like, one of the scariest movies, for sure. Yeah. I mean, if you didn't catch it from all of my horrified reactions in the first episode, in the reaction episode, then, you know, go back and listen.
Right? Definitely worth it.
Meemies, story-wise, I mean, Conjuring verse in general, like, the thread is very well done.
Yeah, we're bought in.
Yeah, we're bought in.
Yeah.
So yeah, fives all around. 5 Screamies, 5 Meemies. That's that.
There's a reason it's like the most, you know, the highest grossing revenue horror series, you know.
Yeah. There is a reason. And one of those reasons is what we mentioned earlier about people's perspective being their reality, right? In that thought, I wanted to share kind of why I like this movie so much and why I get emotional from watching this movie every time. So I wrote a little something that I'm just going to share because it's too many thoughts for me to try to articulate myself.
Yeah. Let's do it.
From fresh. Okay, so depression like possession. That's the theme of this section of the podcast.
It's free 99.
So often in the throes of depression, it can feel like something is wrong, like the I must be dying feeling, or my life doesn't seem like my own kind of thing, so on. Sometimes when watching possessions, I relate it very much to those out of control kind of feelings. Because I'm very prone to depression. I know the woes of it. The Conjuring in particular does a really good job at bringing drama and emotion to the possession. This specific scenario is of Bathsheba possessing Carolyn to kill her child. The most powerful moment is Lorraine showing Carolyn a memory of her girls and what she lives for, right? I have a really strong emotional response every time I watch that scene. I cannot get through it without crying. I cried in our reaction episode, right? So there is some family history that isn't necessarily mine to share, but I feel comfortable sharing what's relatable to my own history, right? So my mom did the best that she could raising her kids, trying to break some cycles of how she was raised, right? I think that's fair enough to say.
Yeah.
No one is perfect, and for that reason, I as well am also doing the best that I can to break cycles raising my own kids. All that said, to share that for me personally, I don't physically discipline my children. Mm-hmm. It's incredibly hard in moments of frustration because it's not how I was raised and not really in my natural skill set. I'm proud of the work that I do, like all the therapy that I do and the conversations that I have with my peeps, like my obs here, and my husband and all the people that I can confide in. I'm proud of the work that I do to make it possible for me to step back and take a minute instead of reacting in a way that gets physical. When those ragey feelings burble up, though, it almost feels uncontrollable. It can really feel like something is possessing you that, like, you have to fight off, right? And when I'm in that fight, I am just constantly trying to remind myself of what I am in it for. And for me, that's why, like, this film cuts so deep, because it's like she's fighting the darkness that's inside of her. And the only thing that can bring her out of it is the light of, you know, what she lives for, you know? And for me, it's so relatable. I mean, I'm not possessed by a demon, but like when you're in rage, it so much feels that way. It just feels so uncontrollable. And I'm really grateful that I have the tools to help control that. But I think there's got to be other people out there who relate to those same feelings. So
yeah. I'm sure there are, and I know you've done a lot of work on it, and, you know, kudos to you to giving a shit enough to do that, you know? Not everybody cares enough to stop.
And now cycle. I'm saying it out there to our whole 10 listeners.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I thought that was a really good metaphor for the movie. That was really powerful. Nice.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really have anything like super cool to say like that.
No, so. Yeah, you did the research. I did the vulnerabilities.
I thought it was cool. I liked it. That's all.
She's got the facts. I got the feels.
Yeah, there we go. Boom.
That's why we make such a good team.
Yeah, right.
I love it. Yeah, so those were my thoughts. Clearly, I truly enjoy this movie a ton. I am very sad and disheartened to know all of that horrible information.
Yeah.
That is hard to overlook. It's really hard to overlook. I definitely won't be overlooking it. That's for sure. I will be retaining that knowledge and making sure that anybody I hear praising the Warrens' name knows.
Yeah.
knows the truth.
Yeah, at least we can walk away with this knowing that the movie has, like, literally nothing to do with anything real.
Right.
So, you know, it's complete fantasy land, and we can still like it for its fantasy land.
Yeah. All right, humans. We will catch you Wednesday after next.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks for listening.
Bye-bye.
Hey, thanks for listening. Screaming Meemies is an independently run podcast. Right now, it's just your favorite ghouls, Aubree and Kaala, with the help of Aubree's husband, Max, who stands in as our Google Search certified audio engineer support. Kaala created the art and music, and together, Aubree and Kaala write and edit the episodes. The best way you can support our podcast is by following, sharing, and leaving us a comment or review wherever you listen. We appreciate your engagement, and we will be back to scare you Wednesday after next.